Here we are at Tobe's Motel and Restaurant, Oneida, Tennessee. It's Tobe Phillips, a relative, said to be the second oldest motel in the U.S. It's me, my mother, and my brother Eddie. Scan around the hotel. He's had a lot of improvements over the years.
Does she ever see her other grandmother?
Every once in a while. She doesn't go very much. For a while, they'd take Betty, that old merchant there Friday night. Miss Lizzie talking?
Mm-hmm. No, this was Catherine. Catherine Dyer.
I see. Well, it's like I went out to nursing home when Dawson was out there, and I tried to keep him informed what was going on, you know, and I said, well, Dawson so-and-so died today, and he said, hell, Paul, I don't know anybody's not dead or dying.
Oh,
oh, he's a case, I tell you what.
Yes.
But,
I wish I'd started on this a long time ago, because I know, like you said, Aunt Tora would have just loved to have
she's a
gotten
wealth of
involved.
information.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you know, none of us get interested in this stuff. In fact, I never did. I've got a bunch of stuff gathered up and laying around, and Irene's fussing at me now, and she's wanting to gather it up. But she's so deep in that historical society out of Huntsville that she's forcing me into that. And the other night,
No, I just loan you a book and then go away, and he says, well, I sat up all night with that damn book.
well, you start tracing back, and, you know, I guess it's that way in every generation, but Phillips got a bad habit of naming everybody after their folks way back. I mean,
Well,
that one.
there's a bad, I haven't seen it, no, but we were talking about the Chipwoods, and I looked in the Scott County historical book, you know, where they traced the Chipwood back. And
Well, Reuben Chitwood did that, but he died, and now you can't get the books because we've not been able to get anywhere with his family. But fortunately, I had, and then we were looking at this because we were looking for Edson's record, because he was World War I.
yeah, now I know that was having verse, and I had evidently a computer error that I made, because I knew better than that. When Verse Nord got killed, I
What's
knew
your son,
that. He was
Paul?
killed in World War II.
Mark, he just lived right on out the road, just about
JT
15
straightened
years
me out on that
ago,
one.
and they started leaking.
And I figured he was good for, you know.
For 4 days.
Well, what do you honestly think about that connection with the Grayson County, Virginia, Phillips? Are you pretty comfortable with that, or
Well, yeah.
there's more proof to be had, I'm sure, that
What was it, Tom and
Joe, the other side, the other brother that came into Tennessee is, there's William Paul, and he's Attorney General, and
Tom?
Tommy is a federal judge and not federal magistrate in Knoxville.
Mhm.
And they've taken a great interest in this, and they made a trip into Virginia. They spent 3 or 4 days up there. And what I was wanting to do, and whatever information I get, I'll share with you. But I was gonna, you know, take your book and see if they were, and what he told Mark, he was talking to him a while back, so he'd share any information he had. And I'll get what they got, and then sort of compare it, because after you get my age, you can't compare anything.
Right.
I mean, you don't.
Well, now Robert, there was the oldest brother that came in at the same time, and I don't know if Jehu talked about, you could say Jehu or Jehu?
Jehu.
Jehu, okay, I don't know if Jehu talked about his father that came, which was,
Well, you got the reminiscence,
Joseph.
haven't you? Yeah.
right, but he had a brother, Robert, that also left at the same time, that went to Alabama.
Oh, they went to Alabama.
Yeah, and this lady down in Alabama married an Atkins, Abigail Atkins. And evidently there were several Atkins-Phillips marriages back in that early time. And
But
there
we
is,
could have had them here too, because we got address.
right, and I think it probably
And they
were
probably
married
are
here
related.
and then went on.
You think they's all legitimate, or?
Yeah.
Not in the Phillips family?
I don't know, I think so. I think so.
Here's something that might interest you, Irene found out there. How about
Over to where the old house sat, and rode up the road toward Howard Baker's house, and there was a man out in the yard swinging a golf club. And we stopped, what was his name, Mom? I'm sure you know.
Stansbury.
Stansbury,
Yeah.
right. And he, we asked him, we told him we were hunting for the graveyard, you know, and this, that, and the other, and he took us to the old one first.
Mhm.
He got on his bicycle and rode over there, and I started looking through it. I didn't see any, you know, marked graves
Yeah.
that I recognized, any names. And then we drove on over to where Riley and all of
Now,
them
that one
were.
apparently was started, back when they didn't really have a cemetery. I guess maybe, well, I can't remember, Jagu may have been the first one, or
Really?
Nancy one. And in that section, because they didn't really have a cemetery at that time, you know, Phillips is itself.
I'll show you how I keep all of my records. And
You need to carry your records.
I'm into computers now.
Oh, gosh.
Joe, you ought to get all that now that Paul has written down right on that thing for you.
If I can
Well,
get it gathered up, I'm gonna get it.
No, he doesn't
up,
have
get-
to do it.
I'm gonna get it gathered up and send it to him.
Yeah,
so
he can do it. Take his time. There's no big hurry.
If you waited 200 years for it, you wouldn't have.
But I've got the people now up in Virginia, the Grayson County Phillipses, excited about, you know, this. I had a man call me. His name was Cox. He had written a book on the 12 children of the first Phillips family.
Oh,
And he had had this book written for I don't know how many years. And, you know, all the records he had of Joseph, who left and came to Tennessee, was that, you know, no further records known.
Yeah,
And so I sent him the reminiscence,
yeah.
a copy of that, and a few other things that I'd located about them going back to Virginia to visit, you know, their grandmother at that time, visited grandmother because the grandfather had died. So that would have been exactly the same time, right after the grandfather had died. And they had the slaves, you know, they had the plantation. And, you know, the only thing I don't have is it on paper, his will, you know, or anything like that,
Oh,
that you can actually for sure tell that.
You never did hear Uncle Joe say anything. You didn't pay, you're like me, you didn't pay much attention to what they was telling you
No.
about. It wasn't interesting anyway, so
See,
that's
we
the
had to
trouble.
get to Knoxville
well,
and
then
get on the train,
Jay, who was married
and then
here
train,
the second
and
time.
come to Helenwood.
Yeah, it was
You know, I came
a
across that
process.
when I
to
got
Somebody
to
had
know
to
it.
meet us,
Yeah.
you know. and-
Here,
Oh, okay.
here's the way it looks on the computer when I got
Yeah.
my mom and dad. Okay, then I branch out, of course, from that, it branches out to, gives me
Yeah.
Gosh, boy,
a
it's
generation.
neat.
And so I can run back this way. Of course, this right here, my grandmother Stone was adopted. So I've only run their family back through, but because of the fact that I don't know who her parents were, actually through T.W., who was her adopted
Yeah.
father. But up here, I can exit right here, and it'll show me the mother, father, and then all the children. And these
Oh,
arrows mean
yeah.
that I have
Yeah.
some kind of reference to them, like Nancy. I don't have any children for Nancy because Nancy evidently died young, did she? Or
She
Yeah,
OD'd at age
yeah, she was never
17.
married.
she died like you said right here is what,
Yeah.
she died in Knoxville, November 16th. And,
Well, that's great. I mean, that's.
and then if I wanted to put some notes, I do a save changes and then I exit.
Mhm.
You know, then you can add them in.
See,
That's great.
I've got to change things right here. There's things that I need to go back in and change that I can do.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, I tell you, that is,
And then I've got, the way I wrote this book, I've got another program that runs off of this utility here
Yeah.
that puts it all in the sentence form in the structure that you see
Yeah.
here. And so there's not a whole lot other than getting the notes right and all of your relatives in here in some sort of order.
Dates and things.
it's just
yeah.
as smart though as you are on the program there. It's
Yeah.
That's, I mean, computers, God, let it go.
Okay, now, see, I don't have Jehu married a second time. So I don't know.
He was older when that happened, and she
It's a
Yeah.
trouble. That's, I mean, computers, God, that'd be very
Okay,
simple.
now, see, I don't have Jehu married a second time. So, I don't know.
He was older when that happened, and she got his pension. I figured a lot of them went and got married, so they'd have
Wait, I
somebody to
did,
take
I
care of
do,
them.
I remember now.
He's
I
married
think
for
I
about
did get
4
that.
years after his.
Yeah, short time,
something
it
like
wasn't
that.
very long.
I did get some of that.
I've forgotten the name and stuff, but I got the papers from the archives.
Yeah,
Oh, Uncle Fred was in World War I.
What'd you find?
Was Uncle Fred in World War I?
Edison was, the only one I remember getting
I
killed
can't
over
remember
there.
whether Fred was or not, but I remember he got hit in the head with a, they came out with a, he was interested in aviation back that time, and they just put a prop on the rear of the plane, a pusher, and he got out of the plane, he was taking lessons, got out of the plane, forgot the prop was behind, walked into it, that cut his head off. It was just like a kill, on the spot. He was the strange one in the family, Uncle Joe and Dad and all of them, Uncle Fred was strange. He could take a drink of whiskey and go on like a human being. And they always called him strange.
He didn't have the Phillips disease?
Oh, no, no. No, it's
Well,
not.
I remember him telling about when he wouldn't stop for the stop sign down there at Sparta, wherever he lived, and the county sheriff would come out and stop the traffic.
let him go.
I guess that's about the way it is.
They wrote that up in this
He was
little
a character down there.
REA
Yeah.
magazine or something.
What was it, John Samuel and JT went to visit him that one
Yeah.
time and came back with all kinds of stories about how he, courted his wife
Yeah,
and
he told
everything
them-
else.
told
He told
about,
them all about that.
That he
now
just,
who of Uncle Fred's children are living?
well, I don't really know. There's, let's see, it was Ted and Paul, and let's see,
Now, do you know Fountain?
I can't
Is that
remember
what
the daughter's
Dr. Fountain?
but I
Phillips.
don't think there's about,
I
there's
can't
probably about
remember.
2 of them, or maybe 1, and maybe they're in Florida. I don't really think there's that many of them living. And you know, there again is a case where, you know, away from home, we didn't keep
Yeah,
it
this
so
whole
together for a long time. We had our
News
own
distribution.
I got the
Yeah,
Bradfoot books.
Matter of fact, I was in
Is this
Huntsville
just
yesterday. I
Tennessee,
went
or
through
is
the
this-
new
Yeah,
tunnel.
just Tennessee.
Oh, did you go through the new tunnel?
Yeah, I went to see
Yeah,
it.
something.
It's
It's cost a fortune, but I guess it's worth it. I tell you another interesting thing over there is the plane that got out of the ice in Alaska.
yeah, that's an old friend of mine. His
Was
wife
it
and
right?
I were college classmates.
Well, I would know.
Roy Schaffner.
He must have a pile of money.
He made it. You know how he made it?
Have no idea.
When a man up there in Carbon, Kentucky, was trying to market
Hmm.
a fancy kind of chicken, he and Harlan Sanders teamed up together. And Roy,
Now, can you plug in on
Colonel?
your main
well, you
computer
know,
and then
Roy's
run
brother,
off copies of it?
Oh, yeah.
was
Stuff
Goldie
like-
yeah.
Schaffner.
Yeah.
And,
There's a
and
lot of
Tyson.
getting on the computer
Uh,
now, they drive me crazy.
So Roy got with him
Well,
rather young,
there's
and
Information
this is when he
groups,
started
and
out.
one of the best ones
Roy
is Virginia
flew,
Roots,
flew,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
runs through the
F-80s
University of
in, Korea.
Indiana, and it's just a talk group,
and he and his brothers have a little
goes,
airport over in
you know,
Clayton
out
County that
probably
they
12,
used to
1,500
fly
people.
into. But anyway, Roy
And,
married a classmate of
Just the
mine.
mail
from
that I
LSU,
picked up off of that,
and,
after coming back from
Well,
That's
vacation.
quite a
I can
story.
see- I
I've
can
been-
see
yeah.
why-
I'll show you some of
I've been
that.
over there. Jim Baker
Oh,
home is right
This is nice.
behind the
Screen
hangar where
saver.
they're restoring that
Oh,
there.
okay, well, I was over
I've got a
there.
modem that hooks in right here to
Yeah.
the telephone line.
Yeah.
You can dial
Well,
in
Jim's
to
house
these
is,
information
uh,
groups, America Online, and
Change
that
some
service.
areas. It's a nice neighborhood
Yeah.
behind there.
now,
We've been there.
where's the Historical Society?
Yeah, I was
finally
interested
identified.
because
Paul
out
Roy, the
where
editor of the
I've worked
paper,
the last few years,
is
and
doing, they're
all,
putting in his paper and our Historical
we've got a
Society in exchange
P-38,
for some
and,
advertising he's doing.
a friend of mine who died
Just a minute.
2 years ago was
Bring my
secretary of the P-38
The
Association.
mailbox is up.
And Roy had sent him a 50 caliber bullet out of that that they recovered. He was very proud of getting hold of it.
Yeah, my goodness. yeah.
No,
Roy
we're,
says he's going to fly that plane.
See, there's three
He says he's gonna fly it
rooms
into
in the
Oshkosh up
basement of
there,
the courthouse.
maybe
There's a lot
next
of
year.
records
They
been
want, I
destroyed.
think, to get it up there this year, but I don't know how much
Well,
they've
so they
done
could
since I
walk
was
on it.
there. Apparently, they've done a lot.
Mormons are helping.
Yeah, but he
us.
plans to
We
fly
we empty
the
it,
original route.
and they
Oh,
were
well,
all
go back to
over.
Europe.
So
Oh,
our
back
name's
to Europe.
straightening out,
Yeah.
putting it
Well,
together.
apparently he's got the
And
money
next
to do it,
Thursday
'cause
they're coming
he
again.
has-
Yeah, I know those people. I volunteer down there
Oh,
3 or 4 times a month. I work
And I
in their,
couldn't, he took the keys out when he.
Aaron
crashed
Sixth.
landed.
Is that right?
Yeah. So So
Oh,
it's
and the
really
linebacker
very
Timothy
fascinating.
Senior. My family's
3 years
from
ago,
Aaron
we,
and Nancy Alexander's son John.
this is
Um,
Marana Air Base. It was
so
the
this is
largest
the
fighter
sexton
trainer
line.
base
Yeah.
in the U.S. in
Connie
World War II,
Dawson. This
and
is,
of
that was
course,
her. That's her
been
maiden name.
deactivated since
I
then.
think I wrote her back and asked her about
We
the
bring
Dawsons if she was
foreign
kin.
police and security in there to train them. We had a Hungarian group
Yeah,
in.
she said my husband Robert
And,
Dawson is probably no connection. His
the,
family seems to have come from around
Lady
Chicago.
that we had
Oh.
as a
Yeah, and I did
interpreter
ask her if
translator
she was kin
had
to the
gotten out of
Dawsons
Hungary in
here.
'56 and
But
became an engineer and retired
Oh,
from Hughes
yeah,
Aircraft, so
brothers.
she was doing this on the side, and she asked me while we were there, saying that since it's an old air base, you wouldn't have to know anything. She said, when I was 15 years old and in my village back in Hungary, an American pilot was shot down, P-38 pilot, and I was the only one in
Here's
the
the one
village
that
who could
got
speak
from,
English. So the gendarmerie got him, and he was
Burge is his
burned.
name. It says, I'm searching for
When
information
he
on
bailed
paternal
out,
grandmother.
Matter
She
of fact,
was
lost his
Elizabeth
boots.
Phillips, born
And,
1859 in Scott County.
They asked me
The daughter of John
to come
Phillips
down
and
and
Phoebe
interpret
Newport,
for them.
married
And
Robert.
I gave him first aid
Robin
and got
Burge.
some salve and stuff on him, but he was ambulatory
Is he related to the Burges
And,
that are here now?
and
Yeah.
interpreted for them while they
Bruce,
questioned
Dan
him.
Burge
And
and his
then
wife are
I
members
stayed
of the
with him and
Historical Society.
chatted with him a
They
while and
just came
found out a
back
little bit
here.
about him and his name.
Robert Burge, born July
Um,
10th, 1881 in Scott
And
County. died
asked him if he'd had anything to eat.
1939
He
at
said no,
Winfield,
he'd
Scott
taken
County.
off
Oh.
early that
Their
morning
four
from an air
sisters.
base south of Rome, and
Mary
they
Ann,
made a
Nancy,
hit
Jane, Sarah, and Mary.
on up near
I
Munich.
believe,
He was on
now
his
see
way
if I wanna go
and he got
back
shot
and check
down.
and see if he's in my database.
And he hadn't had anything
Find
to
out
eat.
if
She
Phoebe
said, well, we
Newport,
don't
I
have a
believe
lot of
is.
food, but
I go back to my
go home and
database
see what I can
Yeah.
get
and I
to
do a
fix up
search of all my
for you. So he
names.
went
Yeah.
back and had it, she had
And I can
his,
do
her mother
a wild
cooking
card
up
search.
some of the puffy
See.
donuts they make over there and some pork chops. That's about all
I
they
was
had.
thinking that they were.
So when she got back to the jail where the gendarmerie had him, she wanted to go in and get it, and she said, no, you can't, the Germans are here now, so.
Stop that.
So she said, well, he hasn't eaten, and see if you can get this food to him.
No match.
No
And I
match.
said, well, I don't know, but we'll see. So she went down the next morning to
Elizabeth
see if
Phillips, daughter of John Phillips.
anything else she could do, and then the Germans had their own interpreters and all, and she asked the gendarmerie guard, did he get the food? And he said, well, I don't know, I left it, and she saw the Germans marching away barefooted down to the train, and that was the end of the story, as far as she was telling me 3 years ago.
Well,
So, I took her down to this friend of mine who was secretary of the P-38 Association, and in 30 minutes he had identified him.
Phillips
Oh,
Newport
yeah.
married, I
And
know.
later that year, this company that operates the air base there had a big air show, and they flew this pilot and his wife out from Michigan, from Ann Arbor.
he was still alive.
He was still alive and flew
This is Frank Newport,
Anna and her husband out
Married,
from California,
Francis
and I was
Marion,
there
too.
Got to
with them
meet
and met him.
which I met him.
And I'd given Anna a little set of
Yeah,
paper
and
from
that Newport
Hungarian
goes
and
back to,
yeah.
American flags when she
No,
was
we're
there
dead.
some months earlier. So when Robert
I don't
Carpenter
have much
came
more
off
on
the
this.
plane from
That would have
Detroit
been
she
JT's
had a
first
plate
cousin, or?
of donuts,
Yeah, that's
Oh.
Fred Toomey's
and when we got them together, she said, something I've been wanting to ask you now
Well,
for
that's
more
not
than
John
50 years.
Samuel and Mary.
Is,
children.
almost 50
Fred.
So that Newport
Did
probably
you get the donuts?
was,
And he said, well,
there
what are you talking about? And she said,
probably
well, you
was,
remember? Oh, I remember you. He said, yeah, I remember you very well.
married Robert
And
Burge.
she said, well, I was trying to get some food to you, and I don't know.
But
He
this
said,
is
oh,
the
yes,
kind
I
of
did."
thing
He
that
said,
you
"I
got
got 'em."
further.
And she said, well,
That you're
just
gonna
in
get on
case
this,
you
Yeah.
didn't get them.
10 Roots, once you get on the internet,
Yeah.
you subscribe to
So
it, it's a free
he said,
service.
well, thank
Doesn't
you.
cost
She said, well, you know,
anything,
my
and,
mother made the others.
Send a subscription
And
to the
he said,
University
well,
of
God rest her
Indiana,
soul.
saying
He
you'd
said,
like
God
to
rest
join
her
this
soul. No,
discussion
she
group.
made these too. She lives with me in California.
And then from there, you could, you know,
Well,
just
that's
about
a
anywhere.
favorite
We had a
story.
delightful
I-
week.
I would
Oh, we had a
like that.
great weekend. So
Did-
Robert Carpenter had gotten back, went to the University of Michigan, became an engineer, and he owned a chain of
Phillips.
9 hardware stores up in the southern Michigan area. Had 9 kids,
Nine kids.
and his kids are all working in the business, very wealthy.
Well, good.
And he, as soon
I'm trying
as
to think.
they could make the arrangements, he was
Well,
flying
actually,
Anna
Peggy,
and Paul,
you
her
know,
husband,
Dawson's
who's
wife,
American,
put a lot of that
back
in, and
to
we found that she
Hungary
makes a
to
lot
take
of
him to the
mistakes.
village and show
Or
him
no,
around
that's
there.
the DAR.
That'd be real.
And I know.
Oh, you know, my dad
was it
was
Huntsville?
retired.
I started to say the last time I talked to your dad.
Well, I thought,
Yeah, but some of them,
Disability,
the Huntsville Cemetery,
No,
And
he-
then
he
we'll
tried.
give the
He tried to
cemetery
retire
out.
with
Yeah, that's right,
disability,
yeah,
and,
but
he did, yeah.
That's
we were just
probably
trying, we were
the,
talking at lunch,
but he
exactly
does
what
say-
year he did retire. We think
give
it
you
was
the location.
77,
Let's see that.
because
And
I
let's
I
see,
spent all
Phillips.
my years
Yeah.
overseas, and I was back here in the summer of
Not all,
75 and 76.
but he's trying to get that
And he
thing.
still had his
cleaned
appeal,
up,
not on
he
the
went over
disability, his appeal on the overtime.
But
Chester
now I
Diane
think,
And this
uh,
went through a long,
Well,
long
they do have
process.
Jehu is,
And,
they have him as
uh,
being buried there, but has he got a stone
I
there?
went with him to a hearing at
Jehu-
the arbitrator.
if there's dates there, they had, there's a
And
stone
he
sometime.
had the
Okay, yeah, September
Rural
14th.
Carriers Union,
And
he sort of thought they sold him out,
That's
But it
right.
ended up
June
in
the 2nd,
court.
1910, yeah.
and was
That's
finally
Betty Ann's,
approved,
isn't it? 'Cause-
except
or,
for my dad, they
That's
said,
Jehu
since he
would
now
been
had
Riley's
retired, that he
father.
wasn't eligible.
yeah,
Well,
that
and
for
then
it,
that
he
but it
father,
became
Jehu.
a fact of regulation
Kizzy.
in the postal service that, to do with overtime. So he was
He
the
wanted-
author of that, but he didn't
Right,
get
that's
it.
great.
He
the
wanted to
names are
retire
the
so
same,
bad, but I don't
you know,
think he
they-
ever
that's
enjoyed
what
Yeah.
his
he said, The
retirement.
hardest thing is trying
Well,
to,
I want to retire so bad
tell which
too.
one's
I
which.
really, well, I'm enjoying my retirement, but see,
But-
like I'm working harder
well,
now
like
than
you
ever
can.
when I
Well,
was
that's
working.
good for you.
Yeah,
Keep
Yeah,
doing
it's
it.
good
and if
for
it
me.
has a direct
When
match,
Dodson
it'll
retired from gas
tell you
station,
so.
we
Mhm.
went
And
down
if
home
not,
and just
you
sat
have
down
another
and
one
and
there.
drank, watched television,
That's
he wouldn't
not-
mow the grass or anything.
There's
He didn't last.
K-I-S-I,
He was
Kizza.
downhill. He just,
Yeah,
Now, Kizzy,
Well, Al did mow.
Kizzy
You don't think
is, doesn't say.
He should have had a hobby or
well,
something.
yeah, hobbies, having hobbies and stuff. I've always been interested in different things and fly too. And meantime, built an airplane before I retired and after too.
A
National-
National Guard Regiment
And
of
she
East
boxed and
Tennessee.
Okay.
lamps, different kinds of
And
lamps.
I'm not sure that
Two
says
original Aladdins and way back.
S-E-R.
And a dozen
A-
others, but she's trying to get her life in order, she says, but she's getting ready to.
I believe it's sergeant,
yeah.
Well, I talked to my
I'm not
brother
sure.
Phil,
but it's,
On his
couple of years
papers it
ago.
would show, but I don't know.
do you remember the little
Where I
still
lost
my granddad
And I
had?
tried to chase down Bakers
Phil
and
has that. And
Yeah.
I
Phillips
talked
and
to
the
him
whole.
about
to show you my,
Well,
my
well,
book,
drive
but,
me
I've just
crazy.
found so much out on my
That's
pain.
great.
I don't know what his
This is my
idea
pain
is,
book.
but you
Oh.
heard what he did with the
Um,
post office, didn't you?
My
brother
great,
Phil?
great grandfather was,
Well, he worked for Mark
appointed
Marietta and
overseer
Union
of
Nuclear for
Governor John Severe's plantation.
38
Oh.
years.
Well, then he substituted.
And he sent his
started
personal
He,
saying-
no,
diary.
he had substituted all 38 of
And
those
maybe
years.
we just recently found
So he
out,
had
Carried on
substituted.
this would have been his
Saturday
fault.
So when
Now,
he
this man
retired from
here
Mark Marietta with 38
joined
years,
militia up in
he went to the
Jonesboro.
post office full-time for
okay.
3 years and
17
retired with 41 years
93.
of service.
But his father,
And they're
That's
broke
great.
off
Oh,
that
that's
one.
great.
Governor
He said those
Severe's-
3 years
Governor
like to drove him
Severe's
crazy.
overseer
He
of his
really,
plantation.
Well, that's
he
great.
said, I
About
don't know
the
if I can
same
do
time.
6 more months.
And evidently, from the research,
But
he
he
had
had to
just
do
come from
3, he had
England.
to do 3 years.
And it doesn't seem natural that he
No,
could have
I-
been,
Yes,
Yeah.
41
no,
years.
we can't connect him to anybody,
And then,
but it just doesn't seem natural.
Then he
would have
started
been
his
that
social
good of a
security right
friend
away at
with
62.
a patriot.
He'll be 65 a
of,
week from today.
You know,
And I
revolution
told him,
such as
I
today.
think you're the only fellow I know that
He
weighs
must
his
be,
money instead of
yeah,
counts.
You know,
He's got a 2 convenience stores, gas markets, one on 75.
I found
at
information
Raccoon
since I
Valley
wrote
Road.
this
That's
book.
BP.
Yeah.
If you ever
I go through
by
some of the
BP station.
moving pains who
at
were in
Raccoon
the
Valley Road,
Patriots
that's-
Index and
that's
most
what
of
it is.
them.
And that's
Yeah.
good.
I've got a set of lamps, and oil lamps that Aunt Tora gave me. I converted them myself to electric and globes and all.
That isn't,
But they came out of the school that she said that Aunt Unity went to.
something
The
of
Mossad
yeah,
Street.
right?
Mhm, I
That's
think
where
it's
they
a
came
sergeant.
Where the
I'm
line-
thinking I'll talk to Irene one of these days,
But it's not.
possibly of getting them back here. into
Well,
the
yeah,
museum.
because
That'd be
they
great.
didn't
They've
know how
got
to
a
spell
neat
either.
historical
Yeah.
society out there, and they're very active, and just built a new archives building behind it.
You'll tell Irene that.
Yeah, they could be put back in, if they could be restored to the
Yeah,
oil.
right.
Oh,
I can't tell what that
stage.
is
She's,
either.
she's telling her that she's. her
A
National-
National Guard Regiment
And she
of
was
East
boxing those
Tennessee.
lamps, different kinds of
And
lamps.
I'm not sure that
Two
says
original Aladdins and way back.
S-E-R.
And a dozen
A-
others, but she's trying to get her life in order, she says, but she's getting ready to.
I believe it's sergeant.
Yeah.
Well, I talked,
Well, I don't know whether, your dad ever told you, I've heard Dad talk about it, and Irene and I were talking the other night, and it always fascinated me about how loyal people were back in the olden days. Uncle Joe, of course, I don't know where he had been. You know, he's worked at several different things, but he come in one time when Dad was still at Grandma's. And Uncle Joe came in, was staying in one of the upstairs rooms, and he said, apparently Uncle Joe had made friends with a guy named Jack Frost, and he was an outlaw. I mean, he was a regular killer. And somebody had threatened Uncle Joe and was trying to kill him or something, maybe over a girl or something, I don't know, maybe. But Dad said that Uncle Joe told him that this guy came in and he was asleep, and the first thing he knew, he shook him by the shoulder and said, Joe, said, don't say a word, said, this is Jack Frost. And said, you tell me where the man is that's causing you problems, and I'll take care of the problem,
Yeah, I like
and I'll
what
be
he's done
fine.
to me too.
Joe said, no, don't kill him. He said, don't kill him. But he come here
That's
specifically
actually
just to kill
scanned
Uncle
in
Joe, just
on the computer and then
and that's
put in the
amazing
word
what
perfect.
people did back then, I swear.
Yeah, he had a bevy of interesting friends. Branch Rickey was a friend of
Oh, is that right?
my granddad's, yeah, and
He stopped one day, Dad wasn't there, and he left his card.
yeah,
Had a red
Wow.
bird on it.
and
Wow.
H.L. Hunt.
Oh,
They were
Bunker
cronies,
and Bunker.
and my dad told me that H.L. Hunt was just a regular riverboat type gambler.
yeah.
And I think it was up around Newport, Kentucky, or Cincinnati, or somewhere, he got in trouble. I don't know whether it was still in Prohibition days when Dad was a Prohibition agent, or whether it had changed over and he was with alcohol tax then. But anyway, apparently he knew H.L. Hunt and helped him in some way or the other, so they stayed friends through the years. And Dad owned that
Realize how much work these things are.
property
Yeah.
out in Texas,
Of course,
in
with
West Texas,
computers,
in
it's
Panhandle.
become a lot better now
And
than it used to be.
H.L. lived in Snyder,
Several
Texas, and
cards.
my dad was out
And
there
try to
with
put
him,
things
and
in-
he never would
And
go out there,
have to
but he
retype a
didn't have to
whole
stop to
page
see
just to
H.L.
get something in.
When H.L. was.
I would like to do
two
something
sons
for the
working
Claiborne
on the
County, but I don't live up there and I can't even
Silver
get to the
Block.
meetings.
Almost
Bunker
done.
and
Bunky and.
and
They
H.L.
have,
Jr.
Yeah.
they're having
One
some
of them,
problems.
one of them
with
owned the
their
Dallas
society.
Cowboys.
Yeah, almost did it too.
Just about.
Just almost did it.
They don't have,
But he made a lot of friends.
two of their, the president and vice president
Of
are
course, being a Phillips.
from
and,
Virginia, actually, live in
Street
Virginia, and
Assembly in
they're
there for
trying to
people.
drive down to all the meetings and everything.
Well, you know,
Organize, and
of
they
course,
can't do that.
They don't have
I
enough
became a
people
federal agent.
No.
locally.
But they have,
Forty.
they're
I didn't
gonna
know
build a
that
new
till years
society, a
later.
new building for the
Uh,
historical
And,
society.
but I was a
And evidently
policeman
paid
in Washington,
what they paid
D.C.,
for
and I
land.
worked
Bought it
down
from
on
the city, of
Pennsylvania
course, the
Avenue,
city
and
charged
quite
them
often in the morning,
an
had
outrageous
coffee
price,
with
and they got a grant from the state.
various ones from all
I don't know
that
if they'll
come
ever get
over,
their
the
building built or not, I
FBI,
hope they do. Haven't been that
narcotic
involved in it.
Well, here, the,
agent charge and others.
well, Howard and
when,
J.T. gave us an
around
old
10
house,
o'clock, my
about
partner and
100
I
years
would
old.
go in and have
I've
coffee.
seen
They
that.
always want to sit down with you.
Well, we
before
just got
you
new
sit
siding
with
on
us.
it, new windows.
Got to know them,
just
and
did a
the agent in
big
charge of the
renovation,
Bureau of Narcotics
and then
there,
behind
was
that, we
telling
built a 35,
about
60
a need they had if,
Because we had to have
if I
someplace
was,
to put all
well, he
that.
really was my
Well, we were
partner
running
he was
into
talking to,
putting so
and
much
he was
land
married, I
in,
was single at
there
the
wasn't
time.
enough
He said he
room
wasn't
there.
sure he wanted to
Do
do
you
it
have
as a
a-
married man. And
Like a humidity
So he said,
control or anything like that?
here's
Or
young
there's
Payne,
some
maybe
remote
he'd be
deals,
interested in it.
It would be
And
So
nice.
anyway, I went up
you know,
to
something-
talk to the
Well,
deputy commissioner, which the building was right there on Pennsylvania
They,
Avenue. I had an appointment, and I went up, and
We have a battle
he
with
was
just
asking me
getting
about
records
myself
out.
and
We emptied
everything,
one room,
and thought that
and
maybe they
the Mormons are going
could use me.
to
And,
come in
he asked me where I was from originally, and I said,
Anything that's not on
Tennessee,
bill.
and he said, oh, I'm
And
from
then
Tennessee
some of the
too.
books,
And I
of
said,
course,
oh,
the
I know that.
county is.
Oh, she
required
knew
by
that
law.
And he said, how did you know that?
Put 'em in, 'cause it'll put
And
'em
I
back
said,
in the
well, I
basement,
knew
we
that
might as well
because
forget it.
you and my
And we don't
grandfather
have
were
enough
once
space, you know, to keep
colleagues. And he said,
everything.
who's your grandfather? And I said, Joe
And-
Phillips. He said, Joe Phillips.
No, I
"My
heard
Lord have mercy." He
that's
said,
not
he must have been dead for
But we
years.
had
And
a
I said, no.
$10,000 grant.
He's as alive as you are, and he's down in Tennessee, and he's got a bottle of bourbon sitting up in the shelf over at Tazewell waiting for you to come through.
Well, I mean,
$100,000.
He said, you've got the job.
I don't know how they got it.
That's how I got it.
Evidently, it took about all of it, just
That
about
was
the property. to build
1950,
build it.
And you
56, that was
got
3
a good
years,
job, man.
3 years before Dad died, when I became a treasury agent.
No, know if you
I'll
have time,
swear,
you know, or
that's
if
a-
you come
Yeah.
back.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
through
you
all
never
that,
know,
see
I
what we
mean,
had.
and
Then
you,
it's,
until you start.
Said
you
why?
know.
He said, how did you know I was from Tennessee?
They wouldn't
And I said,
let,
because I heard my
I was talking to
grandfather talk
the
about it.
couple, I guess it's the same couple that are doing your your microfilming. I can't think of their names right now. The lady's kind of got palsy.
And I always wanted to see his baby.
Well,
never show
Thompsons
his
are here
baby.
now, they come out of
He's smart, he
Kentucky.
never did.
Okay,
tell
no,
me
But
he's
something.
before them,
But I
what
could
was
see,
their
and
name?
he'd always,
Steak-
he said, now,
Steak-
who is it that gives dimes out?
Well, these people are new to the Knoxville church down there, and they went up to Taz one though, and
He said, remember, John
asked
D.
the
Rockefeller gives dimes.
That's right.
county court
That's
clerk
true.
up there and several of the other officers of the court if they could microfilm the records, and they said no, said they didn't need,
Right
want
here, I just
anybody in
looked
there
through this,
messing with the records.
sailors.
They didn't, evidently don't
Walter
understand, that
Denzel
they're doing
Phillips.
Observe
Do
what
they
Helenwood.
not have an historical society?
Walter
then?
Denzel,
Well, that's just the thing, I don't think they have one that actually will go out and
Do something.
do something, It's
Because
really bad.
we were trying to,
They've got several
figure
places
out,
put on historical
Walter-
registers
Does it
and
say
stuff,
how old he is?
well, said he was
Okay.
18
I
years
really locked
old
it
at
up
the
then.
entrance, and he
Sometimes
went
they
in
do that.
on,
Here, they're too lazy. I'll do
August of
something. They don't
18.
care.
Yeah.
and then he'd been
Too much.
born
Well, I
in
cleared the
1900.
county executives that were,
Time to time, well,
God,
both
he
of them
should
would.
be in there,
And
but
then Uncle Joe bought the
It's
house
not, I
on
don't
that
know.
around
I mean,
where
I-
the hospital is now, or
that
the
book
house next
is
to it.
all you
Yeah,
got,
which
which
one.
is a hell.
And Walter and Allie stayed there, taking care of
Judy.
cooking for him or whatever. Well, he wasn't that nice navigating that mud. And,
3 years
it was before that though, I think he bought the Toomey farm.
Judy, or
Yeah.
As in 40,
during the war,
During the
oh,
war.
3 years, or during the war,
Or,
I guess
whichever
so.
come-
We-
50.
whichever came first.
Remember
Yeah,
the
somewhere
one there.
between 48 or something like that.
Yeah, he
Somewhere.
retired in 49.
Who did?
Somewhere, I've got the pictures of that place burning down there.
Sure
Dad,
enough.
Dad called me one day and said, tell me house on fire. And I grabbed the video camera and Ron just.
I was telling Joe and Eddie that we'd get off the train there, not the critic, maybe somebody'd meet us.
Yeah.
And that house at that time looked, it was furnished and carpets
yeah.
on the floor and everything.
What was about the Dodge, Mr. Dodge that came through and left,
Horse Dodge?
yeah, and sent him back a
Well,
stove from,
he used to stop and drink with John every time, and they stopped the Carolina Special. Nobody got on or off the Helenwood, but when he wanted off, they stopped. When John wanted to go north or south, they stopped the train for him. There's a horse down here drinking with him for about a week, and they said, man, he said, oh, damn, John said, you need a stove in here. They just had one of those round heating stoves, And no, he said, God damn, I don't either. Yeah, he said, you do. He said, I'm gonna send you one when I get back. Well, he just told somebody to go buy a stove and ship it to Helenwood, Dad was the depot agent over there. And they shipped it freight, and that means they have to have help on load. But he didn't ship a heating stove. He shipped an anthracite cook stove. It was a commercial cook stove, and it
Yeah.
took about 14 men to unload it. And they finally got it down to the old house there and put it down in the basement. It's sort of a hatch basement.
yeah.
And when that house burned down, that stove had never been taken out of the crate.
And
I
It
saw
burned a little of everything, didn't
Burned everything in that house up, but it had never been taken out of the crate.
I'll swear.
Because I saw it a few years before that still, but it
It ruined the stove though, did it? I mean,
yeah, just melted his hand. Oh, that was the hottest fire we've ever seen. And so whoever bought it, I believe it was Hewitt owned it at the time. I rented to somebody and just carelessly just burned it down there on purpose. People are. But
Yeah, my grandmother Payne's house, there was some, actually found the people who did it though. They spent a year in prison for doing it,
good.
but that wasn't
I've
long
got
enough,
Dad
really.
brought me a clock just like that from over
Says,
the
I'll
Virginia.
give you back your
Oh,
building.
did
She had a lot of antiques in there.
I see you've got the
Houses and stuff.
Kliegel painting of the old home place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, and the one thing that gripes me a little bit, and of course I know it's how people get, all of us don't do what we want to do, and we try to share information every once in a while, but Ruth Griffith had a movie camera film, 8mm, of Grandma Phillips in front of the old Phillips house down there, walking, and maybe somebody else. And every time I saw her, and I mentioned to everybody in the world trying to get a copy of the film. I told you, I said, just send it, I'll get a copy, send it right back to you. But then she died, and of course Joanne is supposed to be looking good, because, who was it, did I ask Pearl or somebody, or Joe Pearl, one of them, they mentioned it, trying to get a copy, and there's still some things out there that everybody could share in. But of course they probably, back then, Dick had money, and that's about the first movie camera that I've never seen one. And I know he had a lot of film, but
When did Ruth die?
she's been dead about 4 years, hasn't she?
I didn't know. Herbert?
No,
Ruth.
Ruth Griffin.
Ruth, oh,
Dixon.
that's a few years back.
Yeah, it's been, well, I guess,
Yeah,
yeah,
not
maybe.
terribly long, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's been a while.
I took my wife and 3 kids and dog, and I took Aunt Tora down to visit with Ruth to Florida on her 91st birthday.
Nice.
She had her birthday while we were on the road.
And
Oh,
Dora
sorry.
did.
What about that? Well, that's where she should have had it, because they always laughed. Everybody said, anybody opens a car door, and Aunt Tora's the first one in the car ready to go.
Yeah.
She traveled.
Oh, she loved that.
We had a good trip, and in '73 I was in Turkey, and my wife was with her, just brought her back into the home when she had her stroke.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they called and actually called me and told me that my wife did, or someone, that they didn't think that she would live. And so I was on my way home, and I was in the London airport when Pan Am brought me word that she had died. And actually I was staying over in London, so I just asked them to book me on, if they could, the next flight they could get me on. And they said, well, it's going to be about 9 or 10 hours to another flight, but they put me up in the Clipper Club there, and I sat there and waited, and I got on that flight and flew back and got home just in time to go down to the church to go to the funeral, and found out later John Samuels was on that same airplane with me, and we didn't know it.
Well,
747, and
Well,
And,
what
uh,
about that?
but he was in Europe too.
Well,
And he and I were on that same airplane and
Well,
flying
well,
home
there
to
you go.
Tor's funeral, and neither one of us knew it
And
till
neither
the
one
next
did I.
day.
Well, I swear.
Had he got word too about
Yeah.
it, Dora?
Mhm.
Well, I'll be darned. You know, that was, of course, she made arrangements with the Presbyterian home up there to take care of her, but that was sort of disappointing. They shipped her back in a cardboard box on old flocked caskets, you know, and all that. And then we had problem with Ruth and Madge, of course. It's like Ruth had to get her car serviced, and she couldn't come
Yeah, I remember.
until a certain day. So, and James Toomey and I thought our job was just going to be, you know, to go and transport from Knoxville to funeral home and then graveside service. But boy, it worked it was sort of comical in a way. I mean, you know, it's not that she died, but we thought we'd never get her buried. I mean, just absolutely thought that. But that was, well, she had to get her car service and all changed, and maybe the tires changed, but they couldn't come about 2 or 3 times.
Also, because
Oh,
she
gosh,
had
well, I
planned
thought that was real cheap.
because she had planned her part of it right down to
Oh, yeah.
even had already, I guess,
Yeah, she
put money with Wes or
She had
whoever had her.
already said, you know, she wanted graveside service, straight from up there to graveside service, very simple, and Ruth and Madge, of course, decided otherwise, and that messed the plans up.
Who is, do you
I
know
told
who
James, I
James
said,
Phillips
James,
would
you
be
reckon
here
we'll
that
ever get them married?
says it
He's
goes
not
down
married.
to Chester Phillips
And he
was the
said,
son of
maybe
James
next few days.
and Lucy? Wonder who that James, that would have been a Wilder Phillips.
I went up to the
You know,
home
in the
afterwards,
back,
and they said, well,
you'll
you know,
find, you know, but you have to-
everything here belongs to us.
I know, I
But
did some,
some of the
Do they have
artifacts
them
and
listed in-
all,
oh, this is the cemetery,
Yeah.
I'm
that
thinking
might be
of another
sentimental,
book.
Let's see if they got it.
They're just
we would,
surname
you
index,
know,
you
be
just
willing
have
to
to
sell
kind
you.
of list them all and look.
So,
Oh, yeah, I'm just certain.
but it was very nominal. It was just
Yeah.
sort of
Well,
a token
evidently-
thing, I guess, to keep them,
See, that-
so to
You,
keep
you
them
just
honest.
more or less go
I
by
bought
your
a,
years because
A
between the repetition in the names.
gold
it doesn't-
stick pin that had been Uncle Burse's, although I never
And there's
known
not
him,
all the
but,
cemeteries are not in there,
I
you've
got
got 400
a,
or some.
Here's a lot of Atkins
opal
and Atkins.
and garnet
Yeah,
green
no, they
in
come-
my,
Well,
my
Paula Masters,
my
who
wife, who was
does a lot of our
close to
stuff,
Victoria,
he's,
who since now given
he's
it to our
from the
daughter,
Atkins
who
line,
has
that's
it.
how come we, because he
And
lives
then
in,
there was a
Rowan
watch
County.
though. Uncle
He'd
Burse
probably
had a
be able,
watch who
he'd be
was
interested in the
engraved.
other Robert,
And I
who was
think I
supposed to
paid
have
the
been
most for
Joseph's
it,
brother.
Yeah.
$50.
So now, that
If
would
I'm
He
not
may have
mistaken,
something
maybe you-
on him.
You don't
He
have
may
one of
have.
You know,
these
I have
faces
no
that
idea
popped
what he
up on it
has.
was engraved.
But
And I
he
gave
and this
that to
other
her
Robert Bailey, the two
to
young
give to
fellows live in
his son.
Oh,
Kingston.
So,
And they
Was that-
come up
go
here.
ahead.
They-
Oh, no.
That's
they're
about all.
both
That
here,
opal,
both young
remind
fellas
me, when that,
young
didn't that
fellas,
come
and
from Birch's?
do stuff, take it
Return
back,
to
put it on
Payne.
the computer, and we
No.
get it. It's all
She
in
found
a
his-
copy
Yeah.
yourself.
She had a brooch, and I'm not sure where that ended
Neat
up.
plug
She
in
had a
ideas.
brooch
Oh,
that was
Keep
made
on
out of
with
his,
this.
I don't
his
know.
wings that were, he had on when he was
oh,
crashed.
that's fine, I got a place.
But I heard, I thought
No,
she
she had,
had it.
no, she had a ring made out of his fraternity, Sigma Nu fraternity.
Oh,
Yeah.
where's your outlet?
Oh, there's
There's
if
one
you
real-
need very far,
No.
we can shorten that here. We can shorten that.
Cause Betsy, you know, was dating that Sigma Nu boy.
Mhm.
She heard about Victoria having that ring, she said, oh, maybe she'll leave that to me. Did you hear Eddie's tell about?
Battery on that
when-
lasts forever. This one runs down pretty fast. What?
I was gonna ask Irene if she heard Eddie telling about those lamps he had from
Aunt
that
Tora
girl's-
gave me a set of oil lamps, so, I, it was some long before even she moved into the Presbyterian home, that she said came from the school, the academy there.
Yeah.
And I converted them myself into, electric. They have a globe and a chimney, small, and I still have them in my bedroom, but, I was, thinking as I began to downsize of, getting them back in, for the museum, but they came out of the academy.
Oh, yeah. Well, just recently I found, what was it, the charter from the 1800s for the Huntsville Academy, and a list of subscribers that they had for the Mossop School.
Well, this was from the Mossop School, she
Yeah.
said, and she had had them, you know.
She was a saver, I mean,
Yeah,
she
she's
just
a-
saved
yeah.
stuff, she really
Well, John Samuel talked about that a lot.
did.
Well, you know, when she moved to the Presbyterian home, there was a Foot Locker in her storeroom. Of course, she lived there on 22nd Street for most of the time, but she lived about the last 5 years before she moved to the Presbyterian home. On F Street, she had to move because GW University bought the building she was in and was going to tear it down or something, so she had to move just around the corner. But before she moved to the Presbyterian home, there was a Foot Locker down in her storeroom, and she wanted me to help her go through it. It was verses,
Oh,
and she had never opened it or unpacked it.
that sounds about
Well,
right.
he packed it away before he went into service.
Yeah.
And it still, it was full of UT, old, UT sweatshirts
Yeah.
and,
Isn't that
stuff like
something?
that.
But
shoe
she
shine
was-
equipment and stuff.
You know, I don't believe I've ever seen anybody that was so affected by a son's death or a husband or wife, but I mean, she absolutely just, I think she went to the cemetery almost every day for
Oh,
years
yeah.
and years.
Well, of course, as long as General Arnold, Hap Arnold was alive, he sent a car for her.
Oh, did he?
It was never confirmed, but it was very apparent that it was him, because, when he died, the car quit coming.
Quick. So it came,
And,
that's
so,
a lot of done.
I
Yeah.
took her, you know, as fairly often, and of course, Linda, Herb's daughter, was very, very
Yeah.
good to her, and took her. Yeah, and each time she went, it was like the first time.
First time, yeah, it was terrible. But of course, it
Just-
was tragic, I mean, it's an unnecessary thing, really, carelessness on this one.
You were talking about those 8mm film. We had a whole drawer full. Well, I don't know if it's a whole drawer. We had several 10 boxes of 8mm film that Granddad Phillips had.
I thought it was 36 millimeter.
I believe it's 8. No.
Real wide?
No.
8,
no.
real narrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
they
is
did
8.
on
Was it?
Yeah. I believe it's 8mm. Anyway, I had them. I had the only one that finally ended up being left at the house. My dad evidently had given some to somebody of the Barron Creek flood in Tazewell, which was when, Mom, 19 and
16.
16.
Oh.
But we kept one. We managed to end up with 110, and I had one of the companies in Knoxville put it on a VHS.
Well, that's good.
And it's of the congregation coming out of the old Tazewell Methodist Church there on the corner. And it's my grandmother Phillips with my mother and Ruth and Aunt Joe, all being led, I guess, how old were you? 5? Maybe?
4 or 5.
4 or 5 years old.
Well, that's great. That's,
I was in the movies when I was 4 or 5 years old.
I never knew you.
Now I'm nearly 90.
He evidently was starting
Nearly 90.
production.
Boy, you're getting there fast,
You're
aren't
pushing
you?
it too fast. I think that a little
I've got
bit.
an ear infection. I've been scuba diving down in Grand Cayman Islands.
Oh, I had meant to show you
Well,
something.
aren't you and Joe about the same age? My brother Joe.
Upper right.
I think
corner.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Upper right
84.
corner. Why don't you get you a set of glasses? I see
I will.
your
Sometime.
arms
I'll be that
are
the
going to
3rd
get too short to
December.
get
You're
on.
not 84.
3rd December.
3rd December. Well, Joe was
That
84
Phillips,
Edison or-
okay.
last month.
I figured we were
Oh.
about the same age.
That's what I thought.
Okay,
Joe
yes,
said
sir.
he was about
Uh,
the same.
Joe married, Joe's daughter, was it Joe's daughter that married a poor, or was it a poor?
Yeah, it was Joe's daughter married four.
Do they still live?
No,
where-
it's
where-
wrong.
No.
Yeah, first there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Well-
they got a divorce about,
They're,
I
they're
thought I
real
heard
good
10
because
years
they
or
give you
something, but
where
it's
they
friendly
enlisted
type
and,
thing,
Yeah.
to show you how friendly it
a lot
was.
of data.
And then they had 2 children.
Enough to get busy and put
their
all
son
that in your
committed
machine.
suicide
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
well, it was about 5 years
World
ago.
War I, and
They still
also I
have
guess you got
daughters.
World
Yeah,
War
we've got a
II.
book, a
But,
separate book
to
on
show you
World
how
War
friendly
II.
the divorce
There's no
was,
Edson's in
they
here.
brought Joe and Pearl over to Gatlinburg, and I met them over there.
And then that
We're
letter.
gonna get this letter.
And they just friendly as they could be with each other, you know.
Yeah, I just ran across
Close
that
friends, and I thought, well,
recently.
that's good that you can get a divorce and be
Yeah.
like that. It really
Yeah.
is.
Where did where did
I
you
believe
find
Pete
this?
is his name, Pete
Um,
Ford.
well,
And, I think he's taking.
I really have
care of
2
his time somehow.
sources, and I'm not sure where they
Well,
came.
I think they
When
will.
we first came back here, the
It's
supply
not in
store was
Middlesboro,
still
it's just
standing,
outside of Middlesboro over in
and
there.
JT and I
He was
took
over
all
here
kinds of
last
boxes
week,
of
or week
records.
before last, and
Most
called
of
his
them are
parents
big
wanted to come over and
records.
see the leaves down
And
there
then
in the park.
also, besides that, when Fred to me, 59, I think,
What
to
happened to her?
62, and
Well, you know, I
then
talked to JT,
the Mormons, and they said when
2 or
they
3
come in,
times,
they
and he
do
told
want
me he
it,
went through
because
his
I said, I
dad's
gotta get
papers
them back
after his
to the
dad
people
died,
that
but I have
loaned it to
I
them.
have a
And
Smith
they'll
44.
microfilm, even
I-
though they're not.
I feel, you know, I'd be more than happy to
From my
give you the
granddad.
originals, and
And,
then that way you just
the
try to get me a
legend is
microcopy
that
back.
this
I will
was
send.
taken in
But,
an ambush.
no, I
from
think it's
Frank
probably-
James' gang up in
Well,
Kentucky.
our
when
big
Frank
goal
James
is
was
to try
hiding
to-
out on Yellow
It's
Creek.
like we get a hold of
Yellow
anything,
Creek,
I've gotten a hold
County in
of this
Middlesboro,
World War I
Yeah.
record,
and,
didn't say one, but I put that
that
in.
he had been in
Everything
touch
we get a hold
with
of, we immediately make at
Benjamin
least 3
Schultz,
copies and separate,
who had written with he and his
even if
brother
we're
in
not
Quantum
gonna sell it,
Raiders.
because if
And
something
all that
happens,
has smidgens of legend and.
I don't know
and
when his
art
first
history.
job, but Granddad Phillips
So I'm coming back
evidently
next year to
started
try to reestablish
as a-
this, but somehow the weapon.
a copy boy, I think it was in the paper.
Jamie had the weapon
I think he was
for a number of years.
just a news, he
And,
set the newsprint, and was
um,
copy boy.
Part
His
according
first,
to
evidently his
my
first
granddad's
job.
story in
And that
trust.
must have been,
And,
it was probably earlier than
ended
18
up
and
in a
90.
dispute somehow or the other
Six,
between an
because he
80
was
Colt
already
that my granddad had
moved to
and,
Claiborne County about that
so
time. He'd
the
already gone down
Providence
there.
on the
He didn't,
Russian
he didn't marry
44
my grandmother till 1905.
never
so
returned to my granddad's
It could have been that,
residence.
about that
And-
time.
And JT told me he had never heard anything about
But
this, but he
I'm
would look, and he
anxious
had
to
told
get
me he
those
did
up
go
here
through
to
his
you
dad's papers and didn't
sometime.
find anything.
Trying to do that.
So I'm coming
Maybe
back
on the
next
same
year to
time.
try to reestablish.
Are you
it, but
open
I'm gonna
at
start
the
with
society on
James
Saturdays?
Museum
Do you
out
have-
in
well,
Missouri.
not really, but I'm
Of course,
retired now,
James
so most people
rather
just
than
let me
came out
know
of
and I
Kentucky
make
originally.
arrangements.
Well, maybe
to get
that's
in,
what I'll
you know,
do.
that-
That
And
would
as
be
long
easier.
as
I think
know,
there may be
then I can
newspapers
make
accounts and
arrangements,
all
yeah.
of, I have the Smith factory history on the weapon as far as manufacture and where it was sent to a wholesaler in Nashville, Tennessee at the time.
Well, now, how did you come about?
Well, through my granddad.
Oh, through granddad.
Yeah, he had it.
But,
Joe, Granddad Joe.
Yeah.
okay, well, the James gang, now Jamie always, well, history has it, didn't it? The James gang sort of based herself here for a little while. They were sort
Yeah.
of.
What
Yeah.
about the
laying
picture of
away.
Huntsville, Paul? Have they seen that picture of Huntsville?
That, the composite that Howard had,
Yeah.
No, I don't
Would
believe
she
you've
be
seen her
familiar
around.
enough with Huntsville? I mean,
Well, no,
they
you
wouldn't,
probably-
but,
It wouldn't probably mean anything to you. Let me bring.
Well, there's
this
always
in
a
here.
rumor that Grandma Phillips danced with one of them.
Yeah,
or
that's
something,
what
and,
they told.
yeah,
Had you ever heard that?
I've heard all kinds, I think everybody dances.
With the James?
Howard commissioned this artist in, where was she from, Missouri? D.
Yeah,
somebody.
he done.
And it's sort of a here, now, there composite of everything. But if you'll remember now, this is Grandma Phillips's house here. And, well, there's several things, and this would be the courthouse as probably we would remember it, you know, and then back in the old bank building, different things. This is an old Presbyterian church here. And this, of course, is a new one where the Mossop School is now. And,
Well, the
so-
Mossop School's down at the bottom there of the building,
Yeah, this
isn't it,
is,
Paul?
That
this
was the
is-
building?
Yeah, that was the building.
Huntsville
Can you see
Huntsville
some of this?
Academy and,
Now, here's the
Grandma.
old home place, let's see.
That's pretty accurately drawn. That's pretty accurate on that.
well, we got photographs so that you could,
I don't know if I remember that. I remember when she died. I don't remember if we came to the
Well,
funeral.
she wasn't
I don't
living
think
here.
Dad didn't
She was
even.
living in a house that Aunt Martha later lived in next
Let me see if
door.
I can get that.
You want some more light? We could.
No,
some
this
lights.
is good. This is good.
But she was living next to us over there because she tried to leave home all the time. They couldn't get anybody to stay with her, so they
Where
moved her.
Aunt Martha and Joe Shootman
Yeah,
lived?
uh-huh.
Well, I remember, yeah, I
Right
remember.
behind the little Presbyterian church.
Yeah.
Now, she was there when she passed away.
But I would have, well, I would have.
Point out again the house if there's.
Uh,
What year did Grandma die?
1940.
1940.
So this is looking down right.
It would be looking
Downtown.
sort of as you come down by the old road that came in, not the one that turns straight into Huntsville.
Okay.
They got the first families.
As you came down here, and the road went right by the house this way,
oh,
and also down this way, of course.
Mhm.
Then right over here behind it, there was another road that came up through here, sort of like an H,
John,
going up to the square.
John Rice Irwin.
Huh.
Yeah, his wife,
They had a, well, they got exhibits on all kinds of.
yeah.
You see them out?